The mimosas clinked around me, but I couldn't taste the champagne anymore. Instead, my mouth went suddenly dry as I watched my father slide the small gift box across the pristine white tablecloth to my sister Pamela. Her manicured fingers opened it with practiced grace, revealing a set of keys tied with a silk ribbon. "The keys to the oceanfront house," Dad announced, his voice carrying over the ambient chatter of the country club brunch. "All yours, sweetheart." I gripped my water glass so hard my knuckles blanched white. 3 bedrooms, direct beach access, multi-million-dollar views, our grandparents' legacy property, handed to my younger sister like a party favor while 24 family members watched with approving smiles. "You deserve this after working so hard on your MBA," Mom added, dabbing at the corner of her eye with a linen napkin. "We're so proud." Pamela lifted the keys as if they were spun from pure gold. "I can't believe it. The beach house, all mine." My name is Veronica. I'm 30 years old and a financial portfolio manager. This is the story of how I reclaimed a family legacy that was never theirs to give away. I maintained my composure as our relatives erupted in congratulatory cheers. My younger brother Jason raised his mimosa in Pamela's direction, to the new beach house owner. "What about you, Veronica?" Aunt Diane asked, turning toward me with genuine curiosity. "What did you get when you graduated?" The table fell silent, forks pausing midair. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes suddenly fixed on me. "A nice dinner," Mom interjected quickly, her smile tight, "and we were very proud." 7 years ago, I'd graduated summa cum laude with a finance degree from State. No celebration brunch, no extravagant gift, just a dinner at Olive Garden and a card with $500 tucked inside. Meanwhile, Pamela had just completed her MBA from an exclusive private university, fully funded by our parents, and was now receiving a multi-million-dollar property as a graduation gift. "It's different situations," Dad explained, his tone carrying a warning edge that suggested this topic was not up for discussion. "Pamela's joining the family business. She'll need a place to entertain clients, host networking events. The beach house is a strategic asset for her career development. Plus," Pamela added, already scrolling through her phone, "I'm thinking of the renovation potential. Updated kitchen, expanded deck. I want to host my first client dinner party by next month." "Whatever you need, honey," Mom said warmly. "We've set aside a renovation budget. The house should reflect your taste." I checked my phone beneath the table. 11:47 a.m. In exactly 13 minutes, everything would change. My screen had been lighting up all morning with notifications from my attorney, my financial advisor, and the trust administrator. Years of careful planning were about to culminate in a way my family couldn't possibly anticipate. "Veronica, you look distracted," Pamela said, her voice carrying that familiar edge of superiority. "I know this might be hard for you, seeing me get something so nice, but you have to understand I worked really hard for my degree. Not everyone puts in that kind of effort." The irony burned in my chest. I'd worked full-time while earning my degree, graduated with highest honors, and built a career in investment management that had made me financially independent. Meanwhile, Pamela had attended school on our parents' dime, earned mediocre grades, and was now being handed a position at Dad's real estate development company, a job she hadn't earned. "I'm happy for you," I said quietly, meaning it in ways she couldn't understand. Let her have her moment with the beach house. In 13 minutes, she'd understand exactly how happy I really was. "We should talk about the moving party," Mom said, pulling out her planner. "I'm thinking next Saturday. We can all help Pamela move her things and maybe have a barbecue afterward." "I've already hired professional movers," Pamela declared. "I'm not having family hauling my designer furniture around." "But yes, to the barbecue. I want everyone to see the place once I've arranged it properly." Jason nudged me under the table. "You'll come to the moving party, right?" "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, my voice steady. Dad's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and excused himself from the table. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see him pacing on the terrace, his expression morphing from confusion to disbelief. Mom watched him with growing concern. "I wonder what that's about. He looks worried." My phone vibrated with a text. "Trust activation complete. All properties now under your full control. Your grandparents would be very proud. 11:59 a.m. right on schedule. Dad returned to the table, his face drained of color. I need to speak with Veronica. His voice was tight, privately. Every conversation at the table ceased. 20 pairs of eyes swung from Dad to me. Is everything okay? Mom asked, setting down her mimosa. I'm not sure, Dad said, his voice strained. Veronica? We stepped away to a quiet corner of the dining room. Dad pulled out his phone and showed me an email, his hand visibly trembling. I just received notice that the Coastal Properties Trust has been activated and transferred to a primary beneficiary, he said, disbelief coloring every word. The email says you're now the sole controller of the trust. That can't be right. It's right, I replied calmly. But that trust was set up by your grandparents. It holds the beach house, the mountain cabin, the investment properties downtown. His voice faltered as he performed mental calculations. It's worth at least $15 million. How could you possibly control it? Grandma and Grandpa set very specific conditions in their trust documents, I explained, my voice steady. The trust activates and transfers to full control when the eldest grandchild turns 30. I turned 30 last month. But they died when you were 15, he protested. How would you even know about these conditions? Grandma told me right before she passed. She was very clear about what would happen and what my responsibilities would be. She also gave me letters, one to open when I turned 18, another at 25, and the final one at 30. Each letter contained instructions and guidance. Dad's hand shook as he gripped his phone. The beach house is part of the Coastal Properties Trust, which I now control, I continued. You can't just take it from Pamela. We promised her. You promised her something that wasn't yours to promise, I replied. The trust has always had stipulations. Nobody bothered to read the fine print. Grandpa was very specific. The properties were to be managed by the eldest grandchild of sound judgment and financial responsibility, activated on their 30th birthday. This is insane, Dad hissed. You're going to ruin Pamela's graduation gift over some technicality? It's not a technicality, I corrected him. It's the explicit intention of the people who built this wealth. Grandma and Grandpa worked their entire lives to acquire these properties. They wanted them protected, managed well, and passed down through the family according to their wishes, not distributed based on impulse decisions. When we returned to the table, everyone was watching us intently, the celebratory mood replaced by tense anticipation. What's going on? Mom asked, her knuckles white around her glass. Dad sat heavily in his chair. There's been a complication with the beach house. What kind of complication? Pamela's voice was sharp, demanding. I pulled out my phone and opened the trust documents. The beach house, along with the mountain cabin and 6 commercial properties downtown, are all part of the Coastal Properties Trust, established by our grandparents, I explained. As of noon today, I became the sole trustee and primary beneficiary with full control over all trust assets. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. Pamela laughed, the sound brittle and forced. That's ridiculous. The beach house has always been family property. It's been trust property, I corrected, managed by a corporate trustee until specific conditions were met. Those conditions were met today. Mom was scrolling through something on her phone. I'm looking at the original trust documents, she said slowly. How did I never see these before? Because Dad managed the family finances and didn't read the details, I said simply. The trust was set up to prevent exactly this kind of situation, impulsive gifts of valuable assets without considering long-term family wealth preservation. You're saying Grandma and Grandpa didn't trust me? Dad's face flushed crimson. I'm saying they loved you but knew you had different values around money. They wanted to ensure the properties would be managed by someone with financial discipline and long-term vision. Pamela slammed her palm against the table, rattling the silverware. You can't do this. Dad promised me that house. Dad promised you something he didn't have the authority to promise, I replied evenly. The trust has always specified that I would take control at 30. I didn't create these rules. Grandma and Grandpa did. Then change the rules, Pamela demanded, her voice rising. You control the trust now, right? So just give me the house. The trust has specific restrictions on how properties can be distributed. I can't just give them away. They have to be managed for the benefit of all current and future family members. That's lawyer talk for I'm keeping everything for myself, Pamela spat. Actually, it's lawyer talk for these properties will be maintained, rented at fair market rates, and the income will be invested for long-term family benefit, which is exactly what Grandma and Grandpa wanted. Mom was still reading the trust documents on her phone. The beach house generates $8,000 a month in rental income when it's not being used by family, she murmured. The commercial properties bring in over $40,000 monthly. This trust has been generating significant income for years. Where's that money been going? Jason asked, leaning forward. Back into the trust for property maintenance, taxes, and investment growth, I explained. The current trust value is approximately $18 million, up from the original $12 million when Grandma and Grandpa died. Good management and appreciation. $18 million, Pamela whispered, her eyes widening. And you're keeping all of it. I'm managing all of it, I corrected. There's a difference. The trust documents specify that family members can use the properties under fair terms. You could still use the beach house, Pamela. You just need to book it through the property manager and pay the standard family rate. Pay? To use my own family's beach house? Her voice rose in indignation. Pay a subsidized rate to use a trust property. Yes, just like everyone else in the family. Dad found his voice again. This is going to tear the family apart. No, Dad, I said firmly. Your promise to Pamela without checking whether you had the authority is what could tear the family apart. I'm just enforcing the rules that have existed for 15 years. Aunt Diane spoke up from the end of the table. I remember when Mom and Dad set up that trust. They were very specific about wanting the properties protected. Dad always said he didn't want his hard work squandered on impulse decisions. Exactly, I agreed. Grandpa built a commercial real estate portfolio through decades of careful investment. He didn't want it broken up or handed out piecemeal. So what? Pamela's voice dripped venom. You're just going to lord this over all of us? Sit on your little throne of properties while the rest of us beg for scraps? I'm going to manage the properties responsibly, I stated calmly. Maintain them well, ensure they continue appreciating in value, and make them available to family members under fair and sustainable terms. That's my job as trustee. You could have told us, Mom said quietly. You could have mentioned this before we promised Pamela the house. I sent Dad an email 3 months ago when the trust administrator notified me of the upcoming activation, I revealed. I outlined the timeline and suggested he review the original trust documents before making any promises about trust properties. He never responded. Dad's face paled. I thought that email was spam. Some kind of phishing scam. You thought an email from Grandma and Grandpa's estate attorney was a phishing scam? I get a lot of emails, he muttered defensively. I didn't read it carefully. That's not my fault, I said firmly. I did my due diligence. You didn't do yours. Pamela stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't believe this. My graduation day, and you're ruining it with your power trip. Pamela, I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm just clarifying what's actually happening versus what you were told would happen. Same thing, she snapped, grabbing her designer purse. You know what? Keep your stupid beach house. I don't need it. I don't need any of this family. She stormed out, and after a moment's hesitation, Mom followed her. The remaining family members sat in uncomfortable silence. Jason cleared his throat. So, can I still use the mountain cabin for my ski trips? Yes, I nodded. Book through the property manager, pay the family rate, follow the house rules, same as always. There were always house rules? There were always house rules. Most people just ignored them because there was no enforcement. That's changing. Dad stared at his untouched plate. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. I met his gaze steadily. Actually, Grandma's final letter to me specifically said she knew this would be difficult, but that she trusted me to stay strong and honor her wishes. Even when family members tried to make me feel guilty, she said you'd probably say she'd be ashamed of me. Her exact words were, "Your father will try to make you feel bad. Don't let him. You're doing the right thing." She knew you very well, Dad. Aunt Diane smiled faintly. That sounds exactly like Mom. She loved you, David, but she also knew your weaknesses. This is insane, Dad muttered. $15 million. $18 million, I corrected. $18 million and you're going to manage it all yourself? I have a property manager, an accountant, an attorney, and a financial advisor. I'm not doing this alone, but yes, I'm overseeing everything. It's my responsibility now. And what do you get out of this? Dad demanded. What's your compensation for being the big, important trustee? The trust documents allow the trustee to draw a reasonable management fee, 3% of annual gross income. That's about $43,000 a year currently. Plus, I can use the properties under the same family terms as everyone else. $43,000 to manage $18 million in assets, Jason whistled. That's actually pretty modest. Grandma and Grandpa wanted the trustee to view this as a family service, not a cash grab, I explained. The real benefit is knowing these properties will be there for future generations. Dad pushed back from the table. I need to talk to my attorney about this. You should, I agreed. Have them review the trust documents thoroughly. Everything is legal and ironclad. Grandma and Grandpa use the best estate attorneys in the state. After Dad left, the remaining family members looked at me with a mixture of awe, resentment, and curiosity. Uncle Tom spoke up. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you say anything before? Why let it get to this point? I tried, I sighed. I sent Dad the email. I mentioned the trust activation at Thanksgiving. I even told Pamela last month that she should wait before making plans for the beach house. Nobody listened because nobody wanted to hear anything that complicated their plans. But you knew this would embarrass Pamela, Aunt Diane said gently. Pamela embarrassed herself by counting on something before confirming it was actually hers, I replied. I'm not responsible for managing her expectations. She's a 26-year-old adult with an MBA. She should know better than to assume ownership of a multi-million-dollar property without seeing actual title documents. Jason was looking at his phone. The beach house rental income is $8,000 a month peak season. Off-season, it's closer to $5,000. Annual average is about $75,000 after expenses. And you're just going to keep renting it out. That's what it's for. It's an investment property. When family wants to use it, they book it and the rental income is paused for that period. But yes, when it's not being used by family, it generates income for the trust. That sounds fair, Jason nodded. It's what Grandma and Grandpa wanted, I affirmed. The houses should be used properly, not as free vacation spots. My phone buzzed with a text from the property manager. Security codes updated, bookings fine. Need guidance on the beach house. I replied, keep it on rental schedule. Family pays standard rate, no exceptions. At brunch, some relatives whispered that I was right, that Grandma and Grandpa would be proud. But Pamela's hurt expression and Mom's sad eyes stayed with me as I drove back to my modest townhouse, the one I had purchased myself with money I'd saved while working through college. After arriving home, I changed into comfortable clothes and made myself a cup of tea, trying to process the intense morning. The quarterly trust reports were still waiting on my desk, a reminder that while today's confrontation was difficult, the real work of managing the family legacy was just beginning. That evening, around 7 p.m., Dad called my cell phone, the same number I'd had since college. My lawyer says you're right. I can't contest it, he said without greeting. I know. Pamela won't speak to me. She says I embarrassed her. You made a promise you couldn't keep. Your mother thinks you planned this to shame us. I warned you. You ignored me. A long pause. I didn't think you had this kind of power. I still saw you as the kid with a $500 graduation check. His voice softened. And now I see you're the one they trusted more than me. They loved you, Dad, but they wanted someone who would protect their legacy, not squander it. So what happens now? I run the properties according to the rules. Anyone can book them if they follow the guidelines, and Pamela can book the beach house like everyone else. She'll never forgive you. Maybe not, I acknowledged, but I'm here to honor Grandma and Grandpa's wishes, not win popularity contests. Dad was silent for a long moment. What else did Grandma's letter say? That this would be hard, that family would resist, that I must protect the legacy and stand firm. She was right about you, Dad said softly before hanging up. Later that night, I reread Grandma's final letter to me. Don't give in to guilt. We built this as a legacy, not to be wasted. You are the keeper now. Stand firm. I stood firm. The beach house remained part of the trust as intended, and Pamela eventually came to understand this wasn't about her, but about honoring our grandparents' wishes. I took on the responsibility of an empire worth protecting, not for personal gain, but to preserve a legacy for our entire family's future. And somewhere, I knew Grandma was smiling. Note: this audiobook recommendation is a paid partnership. If you enjoy stories like this, try Audible's free trial with access to thousands of titles at no cost for your first month.